It's great to have back on the program today Dan Harris, author of 10% Happier and also host of the 10% Happier podcast. He's also a former ABC News anchor who embraced mindfulness after having a panic attack on live TV. Dan, it's great to have you on. I've been checking out your podcast regularly, and it's great, and I'm looking forward to talking about some of these things with you today.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
So, listen, to start with, in the 3 years, 3.5 years since you and I spoke, the topic in general of anxiety has gone significantly more mainstream. Jonathan Haidt has a book out, The Anxious Generation, that's getting a ton of attention. And depending on who you talk to, the focus will sometimes become social media and devices, or it will be about work culture as the cause, or whatever the case may be. I'm curious, as someone who's been talking about this publicly for longer than it's been as kind of en vogue, has your opinion about anxiety in Western society and its causes changed at all over the last few years?
I think it's constantly evolving. If I had to guess, well, this part isn't a guess. I think it's for sure multifactorial. But my sense, having conducted hundreds of interviews on the subject, is that there in the toxic mix would be an increasing allergy to discomfort. And again, I don't blame our young people for that. That is the world we've created for them. But we've made a world where there is kind of an insufficient amount of friction. You can get through swiping dates, Amazon meals, rides, information. And so a lot of the friction that was built into my life as a young person isn't there for young people now, and that creates a kind of intolerance for discomfort. And so I think that's part of what's driving the anxiety. I think another part is lack of social interaction, and that, of course, is related to Jonathan Haidt's stuff around social media and the other apparently noxious impacts of modern technology. But I think one of the biggest parts of this, and Jonathan talks about this, is that kids and all of us are just insufficiently exposed to other people. And this is not conjecture at all. The longest running scientific study in science has been done at Harvard, the Harvard Study of Adult Development. You're
Yeah.
nodding your head, you're aware of it.
Yeah,
And
we
a lot of
interviewed
people,
one of the authors.
yeah, so Robert Waldinger has been out there, and it's the thing that comes screaming out of the data of studying many generations of people who live in the Boston area. It's just to get a sense of what creates a long and healthy life. It's the variable, the number one variable, and probably the number one, two, and three variables, is the quality of your relationships. So we know that the human animal needs relationships to thrive, because stress is what kills us, and relationships can moderate our stress. And so I think the fact that we're not getting enough face time is leading to more anxiety. And then I think finally, just there's structural stuff around the climate, the economy, and overall just the pace of and rate of change. Things have always changed all the time. That is a non-negotiable law of the universe. But the rate of change appears to be picking up, and I think that's probably contributing to the anxiety.
After you had this panic attack on national TV, you made a lot of very tangible changes over a long period of time, which include the career changes, meditation, which you talk about a lot and have written about and see as an asset, all sorts of different kind of practical changes. But I guess what I'm curious about is, have the changes, let me see how to ask this the right way. Do you think that the changes themselves are what have given you tangible and practical benefits with regard to the way you feel? Or was it sort of the decision that, okay, now that this happened, I now need to undertake a sort of journey of sorts, and it was that process rather than the specific changes you made that made the difference?
I think it's both. I don't. I haven't heard that question before. I like that question. I think there's something about seeing clearly. I have anxiety, and also sometimes that's comorbid with depression. But I have anxiety, so I recognize it. The first step is admitting it, and I'm making the affirmative decision to address it. I think there's a lot in that, and then of course the practices, and there are many that we can talk about, all do, and these are evidence-based practices, they all do help. So I do think it's a combination.
I talk to people in my life sometimes who have what they describe as social anxiety.
Sure.
And the way that they say it manifests is the idea of I'll invite a friend to a gathering with 10 people where they only know me. And they will say, and it's great that they're honest, they'll say, the idea of going to a place where I don't know 9 of the 10 people causes me a paralyzing anxiety where I get a physical response now. I'm not even there, and I'm just going to stay home, for
Yeah.
example. For me, as someone who doesn't have that particular type of anxiety, it's really hard to put myself in that mindset because I don't know, I talk to people I don't know all the time and go places all the time and speak to groups or whatever. But on the other hand, for me, I've talked to my audience before, I would describe myself as having medical anxiety, which again, to other people who go, listen, you just go and they'll tell you what's wrong or whatever, you don't ruminate about it. Sometimes it seems as though there's something about this that can be difficult to really empathize with if it is a flavor that is different to the one that you have. How does that sound to you as someone who's dealt with some of these things and not others?
It sounds completely natural. I mean, it's hard to empathize with something that you've never tasted yourself. Um, I'm just thinking of a story. This literally happened yesterday, um, because it's a great counter example to this trend or this potential that you're describing, which is to struggle to feel empathy for a flavor of anxiety or anything on the vast menu of human mania that you have not experienced yourself. But yesterday I had a really, for me, it was small but very powerful experience of the opposite. I have intermittent bouts of claustrophobia, which
Mm,
can produce panic for me. And so
yep.
when it's present for me, it's really bad, and it's crippling. And so I'm just in one right now. And I yesterday I arrived at a building in New York City where I was going to tape a podcast at a studio on the 16th floor. And I was late and I had a lot of luggage with me. And I looked at the elevator and I was like, I can't get in. This is too small.
Hmm.
And I turned to the guy who was at the who was just like the security guy. And I said, can I take the stairs? And can you just like take my bags up? And he said, he looked at me, put his jacket on, is like, no hesitation. He's like, I'm going to ride up with you. And he took me into the elevator. He's like, you're going to do this with me and you're going to be fine. I mean,
Hmm.
just like no hesitation. He just saw that I was suffering and didn't know me at all. Um, and talked to me up to the 16th floor, and I made it. I was fine. I did not panic. And it was just a great example of the fact that humans are underrated. You know, we have this capacity for empathy and for kindness that is totally overlooked and undervalued in a world where our information is served up to us via these all-powerful algorithms that
Mm.
reward negativity and conflict and polarization and red meat for your priors, and yet empathy is available to us, and the really good news is that it's a trainable skill. This guy I met yesterday, Barry is his name, he has it naturally, but your self-diagnosis of a lack of empathy for your friends who have social anxiety, like that's a trainable skill, in
Mm.
particular through various forms of meditation. And so this is the last thing I'll say because I realize I'm running along here, but to me, the most exciting thing in the world is that the brain and the mind are trainable, and that these mental states, these qualities that we want, empathy, peace of mind, happiness, connection, compassion, they're not unalterable factory settings. They're skills that are trainable. That's kind of my little rap. I say that a lot, but it is, my life is really designed now around disseminating that news.
In terms of the trainability, depending on who you talk to and depending on exactly what one is experiencing, you can get recommendations or access to exposure type therapy, medications of different kinds, SSRIs or non-SSRI medication, meditation and other forms of mindfulness, exercise, the full gamut that is out there in this sort of industry that will help people to deal with whatever flavor of this they're experiencing. As a non-clinical professional yourself, what's your sense of the combinations of these different tools that are available and their utility?
My attitude is yes to all of it. Um,
Mm,
I'm a maximalist. I think you should pull every lever at your disposal. Now, I'm also dogmatically non-dogmatic. So I really believe that people should make their own decisions. So I'm not here to wag my finger at you and tell you you should do X or Y. I just I can tell you what's worked for me, and I can tell you where the evidence is.
right.
And so some people are, I think, are overly reflexively anti-medication for not illegitimate reasons. I mean, we I think it's I think it's possible that we are over medicating ourselves, particularly our children, and medication does have some efficacy, and especially when it's at part of a mix. So, for example, for myself, I have panic disorder. It particularly shows up around either public speaking, which is odd given that I am a public speaker for a living, or more worryingly for me, claustrophobia, so elevators and airplanes. So
Hmm.
if I'm in a bout of like I'm really struggling to get on a plane, I will use as a bridge medication, but then I will also do exposure therapy so that I'm going to the root of it. So like by exposure therapy, I mean I've spent months uh, where I've had regular appointments with my shrink riding in elevators at the Westchester Mall in White Plains, New York, so that I
Mm.
can just get exposed to the thing that stresses me out so that it stops stressing me out. The problem is that if I for some reason go for a long period of time without airplanes or elevators, it comes back, and so I have to do the therapy again and maybe use the medication. And but so I guess what I'm saying here is yes, and it's about finding the right mix for yourself. And I don't think we should be taking things like medication off the table just because of a concern about an otherwise legitimate concern about over medication, because I think it can be used in concert with other evidence-based things like therapy, meditation, exercise, sleep, diet, all of the things we know also work. Um, but sometimes you just need to reach for a tool that might be uncomfortable for you, but it does work, or it can work.
Last thing I want to ask you about, I'm curious, where are you on your personal social media use? Because social media comes up so often now, and there are varied opinions as to the degree to which this is a factor in people's anxiety. I think it probably depends on what one is anxious about, the effect that social media participation may have. What's your kind of personal social media usage right now?
Yeah, I think I have a pretty nuanced view on this. I mean, I know Jonathan Haidt has been out there pounding the table on how bad social media is for us, and I tend to, so in my gut, I just kind of believe him, but when I look at the data, it seems a little mixed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to really know, and I'm not an expert, but in my gut, based on my N of one laboratory of my own mind,
Yeah.
when I'm on social media too much, it makes me unhappy. So it feels right when he talks about the dangers of social media. That being said, I am also wary of being a Luddite, and Haidt himself is on social media. I mean, he
Yeah.
has a very active Instagram feed because I know because I follow him and because a fan and admirer. I never really used social media consistently until about a year ago when my agents, shout out to UTA, prevailed upon me to start getting more consistent about it for business purposes. And it's been interesting. On the one hand, I've really looked at the creativity of coming up with very pithy, helpful things to say that I can disseminate where the actual eyeballs are. No matter what I think of social media, it's quite popular. And so that's where people are. So it's nice to reach people where they are. And I've enjoyed the creative challenge of that. And I've also noticed that when I am tired or lonely or bored and I check how my videos are doing, that makes me quite unhappy.
Hmm.
And so it's
Regardless of
about
how well they're doing?
they're never doing well enough. I mean,
Okay.
the human animal is wired for insatiability.
Yeah.
It's evolutionarily adaptive, right? Because if you had only one meal and were satisfied, you wouldn't get your DNA into the next generation, right?
Right.
So it's never enough, and you bump right up against that insatiability with social media, especially if you're a content creator. So it's really about a balance, and I'm just constantly working on it. As you can hear, I'm not a big fan of hard and fast rules. Um, everybody's life is complicated, and everybody has their own their own details and nuances that they have to attend to. And so I try to give sort of broad north stars and for myself and for others. And there's an art to the application of it in your own circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, my view on it is at this point, it is increasingly difficult to fully participate with most of the people you know if you completely rule out all of these
Yes,
technologies.
yes,
I think it's good to resist the instinct to anytime there's a moment of boredom to turn to this. And I try to make it easy for myself to turn to a book rather than these platforms, at least some of the time. And also, it's okay to just kind of entertain yourself at some point with some of these things, as long as it's all kind of being done, like you're saying, in a kind of environment. I think being deliberate rather than just reflexively
yes,
being on it is kind of the critical
yes.
part.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And this kind of brings me back to my hobby horse, and I apologize in advance around meditation because mindfulness meditation which is the kind of meditation that I talk about. It's designed to to create mindfulness, which you can just translate as self-awareness.
Right.
And if you have self-awareness, hopefully by hour 23 of going down a Twitter or X rabbit hole, you wake up and realize I haven't eaten and I'm pissed. I should put the phone down.
Right.
And actually, if the mindfulness is really working, it happens, at minute 12. And it helps with that intentionality that you're describing. And so I just, you know, put a gentle plug in for it in that regard.
Dan Harris is the host of the 10% Happier podcast, which I subscribe to. Dan, always great talking to you. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.